Ahoy there, me hearties. This be Captain Silver Hook, and you're listening to the Two Old Pirates podcast. Set sail for an open sea of stories, tales, and some really crazy stuff. I expect you to like and subscribe, lest you be walking the plank. Ha ha ha!
Hey, it's Eric. Welcome to Podcast 44. Please subscribe. If you're watching this and you haven't subscribed, just click the little red button. It would help us out so much. We're trying to hit 500 by the end of the summer, and we're only about 28 away. So please subscribe. But let's get to the podcast. What's known as a lobotomy. All right? Some of you might have heard this term. Some of you might never have heard this term. Trust me, watch this episode. You'll really enjoy it. You're going to be kind of frightened. You'll be maybe kind of sickened. You'll be a little upset. And you'll be amazed that this took place in the course of American history. Okay, we know mental illnesses, right? We understand that when it comes to like outward injuries, broken arm, you can tell it's a broken arm, cast on. You tore your knee up, you have to have the ACL worked on or something like that. These are all different things. You see crutches, you know. When it comes to mental illness, a lot of people don't really understand it, and it's still kind of thought of as it's just get over it. You know, it's you. You just need to go ahead and meditate, or you need to drink more water, or you need to get more sleep. So, you know, in the ancient times, if people, what we would now consider having mental illness, they were considered possessed. So there might be some type of a demon that possessed them. They might have to have an exorcism. Or, you know, even in the ancient times, in the Roman times, you know, in the Egyptian times, there's all different ways that people could go ahead and try to rectify the situation. Now we know, you know, of course, there's a chemical imbalance in a lot of people's brains. The brain is still the most kind of unknown part of the human body. We know how the heart works, liver, gallbladder, stuff like that. The brain is still so unique. So what I want to go ahead and talk to you about is a weird phenomenon that transpired over the years from about the 1930s until about 1967. And it was called the lobotomy. So please don't turn off. Please pay attention. And I think that you'll really enjoy this part of American history. So there's a scientist over in Portugal, and he had actually won the Nobel Prize for Science this one year on the way that he worked with the brain, which are right here in the front part of the brain. That's where most of your personality in different areas of your body where you might make poor choices, or you might act out, or you might have aggression, that all that part is in the frontal lobes of the brain. And so what he did is he took this like round screw type mechanism and drilled into the heads of mostly women. And then he would insert a metal tubing and just basically squash the frontal lobes. That went on for a little while. He did about 25 women, and he showed in his articles, you know, there was great success. That, you know, whatever had been a debilitating thing for them, whether it been depression, anxiety, maybe they talked back to their husband and he didn't like that. I know that sounds crazy, ladies, but he wrote in these papers, well, there was a young doctor here in the United States, and his name was Dr. Freeman, and he is a neurologist, so he studied the brain and stuff. And he said, man, if we could just go ahead and figure out if this really works, we could use it on mental patients, and the different sanitariums across the country in the United States, we could go in and somehow get this to work, and maybe we could fix these people that are having so many mental disorders, and we would shut down mental institutions forever, and people would be healthy, and they'd be productive citizens, and they wouldn't have to live in this horrible life of just sitting there staring at a wall all day. And so, you know, so he did about 100 to 200 of these, but he couldn't do the surgery because he wasn't a neurosurgeon. He was just a neurologist. So he studied the brain, he just couldn't operate on the brain. So he brought in another guy, and the other guy was named Dr. Watts. And Dr. Watts would drill into the front of the head, just like they'd heard about the Portuguese doctor, and they'd go ahead and scramble the part of the frontal lobe. A couple people died here and there. The death rate was about 15%, so I don't know about anybody who would want to go ahead and have a surgery that you don't really have to have, but you're in the hope that it's going to go and make you feel better mentally, but you have a 15% chance of dying. Okay, so he would tell Watts what to do during the operations, and Watts would scramble the brains and stuff. Then he was reading a news article about an Italian doctor, and the Italian doctor said that he had found a new way that he was thinking about doing operations on people in their brains. And it was right here. If you see where your eyebrow is, I always used to tell my students, feel your eyebrow and then go just below it in this little bitty piece of skull right here. Right below it. It's very, very soft. It's not very, very hard bone. That he would tap through that, and he would go ahead and mess with the frontal lobe that way. Well, Dr. Freeman saw this, and he's all like, this is amazing. Let's do this. Because it wasn't surgery. So therefore, Watts would still help him and tag along, but Freeman now was free to operate however he wanted to. So he started going to different mental institutions and sanitariums, and of course, the patients didn't have any say in this. And the first person that he performed it on was actually a woman that had been in and out of mental hospitals, suicidal thoughts, severe depression, severe anxiety, different things that we deal with on an everyday basis now. And he said, I can fix this person. So what he figured is, instead of giving them some type of medication to knock them out, what he would do is he would go ahead and use electric shock to produce a seizure, and then the seizure would, of course, knock you out, and then he would go to town with what he used, which was an ice pick. So I want you to think about an ice pick. If you don't know what an ice pick is, that's an ice pick. All right? Looks kind of jagged, and it's used to break up ice, not right here in your frontal lobes. And what he would do is he took it on that lady and put it right there, and then took a mallet and just pop, 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 pop. And then he would swish it to one side and then bring it back and then swish it to the other side, and that was cutting through the frontal lobe. And then he would take it out. There'd be a little drop of blood right here, and then he'd go to the other one, tap, 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 swish, swish, pull it out, done. And she had 2 black eyes. And she recovered, and a couple weeks later they said that she wasn't seeming as depressed or suicidal or anything like that. So he was all, it's a success. And so he started traveling to all these places, and he would work on all these patients. And I think he worked on about 400 that way. And then people started coming to him saying, hey, my little boy's misbehaving, or my wife's thinking about leaving me, or my girlfriend talks back to me, or my wife wants to get a job, or there was all these different things, and these had nothing to do with what his original plan was. The original plan was to help people that were mentally ill that were institutionalized. And now these are private citizens that were coming up to him saying, hey, you're a doctor. We've read about this. It's all over the news. And you're doing hundreds of these and stuff. Can you do it on everyday people that also have like depression or things like that? And he was all like, why not? So he started going town to town, and they would have newspapers, and they would have leaflets put all over town and stuff. Is something bothering somebody in your family? Do you need help? Is your child misbehaving? Now, during this time period, the news had got back to a very, very famous family here in the United States, and they were known as the Kennedys. Yes, John F. Kennedy. His father had had a number of children with his wife, Rose Kennedy, Joseph Kennedy and Rose Kennedy, and one of them had not really been how they wanted her to be. During childbirth, was not allowed to be born on time. And so for 2 hours, she was deprived of a certain amount of oxygen. So it made her a little bit more rebellious. She'd speak out. She smoked in public. She drank. She cursed. And she was kind of an embarrassment to the Kennedy family. And they were very highfalutin, right? Joseph Kennedy had a lot of dreams for his eldest son, Joe Kennedy, to run for political office. Unfortunately, Joe Kennedy died in World War II in a tragic accident. So John F. Kennedy then became the golden boy. But when she was about 22, the father, without the mother knowing or anybody else knowing, took her to see Dr. Freeman and paid him to go and give her a lobotomy. And of course, like I said, the lobotomies don't always work out. And she was put in an asylum in Wisconsin, of all places. The Kennedys are known to be from Massachusetts and Wisconsin. So basically, out of sight, out of mind. That was the most famous person he ever performed a lobotomy on. So Freeman goes on city to city, and there's, like I said, there's posters, sheets put up all around the city and stuff. And he would usually go to the high school auditorium, and he would tell people, just sit in your chairs. Each of these takes about 5 or 10 minutes. They're $25 a pop, and they would have all these cots set up on the stage. And he would go up and he would talk to somebody, bzz, shock them. They'd go into a seize for about 30, 40 seconds. They'd be unconscious, and then tap, 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 squish, squish, tap, 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 squish, squish, pull it out, tell the guy, hey, take her home. She's going to have a headache. She's going to have black eyes. And I keep saying she because the majority of people that this was done to outside of the insane asylums was women. You got to understand, women had just got the right to vote about 30 years before, 25 years before. And now they were working outside of the house. And some men who have fragile egos did not like the idea that women were stepping up and saying, no, I don't believe in this, or I believe in this. And so they were having their women quieted. So this went on for quite a while. And the number one main aspect of what happened was it didn't make you different in any other way than it usually made you robotic. All right? You didn't have a lot of anger anymore. You didn't have a lot of sadness anymore. You didn't have a lot of happiness anymore. You didn't have a lot of joy anymore. You could still carry on conversations. It was just, there was nothing there really. You could still do math, science. You remembered history. You remembered birthdays. You didn't forget anything. It was your personality that was killed off. All right. So Dr. Freeman did this for quite a while. I think the youngest person he ever performed it on was a 4-year-old little boy. They believe that Dr. Freeman performed about 4,000 lobotomies at $25 a pop outside of the sanitariums and the insane asylums. That's a lot of cash. He believed it all the way up until 1967 when the United States stripped him of his license. They finally stripped him of his doctor's license due to the fact that there's so much outrage of so many people that have been injured, harmed, and even died because of lobotomies. Now remember, when he was going to these different places and he was telling them this is how you do it, he was giving them the ability to know how to do lobotomies. So he turned over his craft to all these different doctors, and since it wasn't an operation, they didn't have to have legal standing as a surgeon to perform it. So they believe that between 1946 and when they finally shut him down in 1967, that the 4,000 he had done was only about 10% of what had actually been done in the United States during that same time period. They believe at the final end, it was about 40,000 at least 40,000 people had been lobotomized in the United States, and it was 100% legal. And the the biggest majority of them were women. And women were literally 100% healthy and were lobotomized into robotic creatures so that they wouldn't question anything. Now, you might sit there and say, well, with newspapers and television during this time, didn't anybody else hear about it? Absolutely, other people heard about this. They heard about this guy, Dr. Freeman, and they started saying, well, can we do this? And so you'd have doctors from other countries come to the United States and see these lobotomies being these procedures being done, and they're like, hey, I'm not a surgeon, but I can do what he's doing. And they took it back to their countries. So in the UK, in England, there was 17,000 lobotomies performed. In Denmark, Norway, and Sweden combined, there was over 9,000 lobotomies. The one thing I want you to take away from this is it was 100% legal. It was just like going to have a tooth taken out or going to the doctor for a checkup or something. It only took 5 to 10 minutes. Now, like I said, this is the way that it started out. So I want you to imagine this, okay? You're going to a place in the town, an auditorium or something where there's a large stage, and there's going to be all these beds put out there. And then what's going to happen is you're going to lay down. They're going to bring out a little bit of electric machine. They're going to put a little bit of ointment on the sides of your temples. They're going to take out this electrode with this gauze around it, and they're going to put it on your temples. And then in a split second, when they turn it on, your brain is going to get shocked to cause a seizure. And so you're going to seize. They're going to have the bite plate inside so that you don't bite your tongue off. And you're going to seize and flop around stuff because you're out. You don't even know you're there. If they didn't go out right away, they were given another shot. They said usually the older the patient, they had to give maybe upwards of 6 shots. So 6 different shots just to knock you out. Children are much easier, usually 1 shot done. All right. So if you're an adult, middle age, 2 shots probably. Now you're shocked. You've seized. You're out. Then they take out the ice pick. They used other instruments later on and stuff, but it was all the same premise. They would find that soft area right underneath the eyebrow, tap it all the way in, squish one side, bring it back to the middle, squish the other side, pop it out, do the same thing on the other side, and before you know it, you've been lobotomized. So in about a week or two, the black eyes, they'd start going away, but the robotic natures, if you're a woman, you could still cook, you could still clean, you could still have the newspaper ready for your husband, have his pipe ready, do whatever it took to make the situation good. But you weren't going to really have any opinions. And if you did, you weren't going to push one very far. And you weren't going to laugh. And you weren't going to go ahead and complain about, you didn't finish your dinner and I'm always having... None of that. I want to fast forward to today. The same problems are still there. You still have bipolarism, schizophrenia, depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts. You still have all these things there. The thing is, in ancient times, you were possessed. Fast forward, lobotomy, we can just scramble that part of your brain and get rid of that. Now we're on to medications. And medications do help. There are misfires in the brain, and there's chemical imbalances, and there's certain medications that can make people feel so much better. But what I'm trying to say is, when it comes to medicine, we're continuously trying to find a way to make this part of us up here, which is going to remain a mystery forever. We're never going to be able to figure out the brain, to try to make us feel better about ourselves. So, what I'm trying to finish with is all the non-medical or medicinal ways that they try to help you. They tell you, get more sleep, exercise, meditate, do yoga, all these different things. Those will all work fine too, but some people really truly do need help in other ways, and there are medicines out there that they take a pill and it stops the misfiring in the brain and it stops the chemical imbalances and they can function. Then there are other people that are, no matter what happens, no matter what you give them, no matter how much they meditate and stuff, they cannot get over their problems and they can't be safe outside of an area that people talk to them, and they might have to have medications to calm them because they could be harmful to themselves or someone else. I think Dr. Freeman started off with a positive. I think he really did want to change the world and get rid of mental illness for everyone. But it was such a drastic thing that you're changing people from who they are and you're trying to get a quick fix by scrambling part of the brain. And anytime that you're going to do anything like that and you're going to change what's already been developed, you're looking at trouble down the road, emotionally and physically. So let's thank God that was done away with. But with all the people around the world that have been, destroyed because of one man's idea, it is a sad part of American history, though. So for those of you that watch this, I hope that you enjoyed it. It's not a very long podcast. Remember, subscribe. Please subscribe. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this. I will be coming back with episode 45 as soon as I can. Please like, please share, and subscribe. Let's get to 500, guys. 500. Do this. All right? Peace.